Eskom has defended the prolonged darkness in South African townships by saying it pulled the plug to stop electricity theft. The spokesperson for the power utility in Gauteng, Qithi, says 50% of electricity consumers in Soweto are not paying for electricity. Here's what she said.
Just to give you a bit of background, in terms of the Soweto, we have a total of 173,000 customers, of which about 85,000 of those customers are zero buyers. So which means more than 50% of our customers in Soweto are actually not buying or paying for electricity. And that has a negative impact on us as an organization. And it also puts a strain on the network because you'll find that these customers are illegally connecting themselves, they're bypassing the meters, and they're also buying electricity from ghost vendors. So they're not buying electricity from the registered vendors that we have approved to sell electricity. And when it puts a strain on the network, you'll find then that the customers are sitting for extended periods without electricity because the equipment fails and the infrastructure is damaged.
Well, researchers have found that Eskom exclusively implements power outages in townships that can last up to 5 hours at a time. According to a University of Johannesburg study, the brunt of the electrical issues is falling on black working class communities. We're joined by Terri Maggot. She's a researcher and administrator from the Center for Sociology Research Practice at the University of Johannesburg. They've published a report titled Energy Racism in South Africa. Terri, thank you very much for availing yourself this morning. Let's start with how this research was conducted.
Thanks for having me. The research was conducted just after the lockdown, during the lockdown in some cases, and it was mostly in Soweto, parts of Soweto, like Diepkloof and Pimville, and we did do some research in Orange Farm as well. And the research was conducted using a team of researchers who are also community activists with close ties to the areas that we researched.
Sure. What did you find that made you conclude that this is energy racism? And what does that mean?
The first part of the question got cut off, but I can maybe talk about what energy racism is. So energy racism, we found, is a practice that discriminates disproportionately against black working class communities. The way that we arrived at this conclusion is that we analyzed Eskom's Twitter page. It's got about 6.2 million users according to its own reports. And on this Twitter page, it makes announcements about the kinds of issues that we're going to be experiencing with electricity. So, for example, load shedding gets announced there. Also, what gets announced there is something called load reduction, which is where whole communities are planned to be taken off the grid. And of the 500 plus tweets that we analyzed, we found that load reduction happens only in black working class areas. So, for example, a suburb like Sandton would never experience load reduction. While it might experience load shedding every now and then, load reduction is a much more purposeful, planned program that Eskom is using to remove whole black working class areas from the grid.
There are many communities in Soweto that can bear testament to that, as well as water reduction that they experience on almost a daily basis. You heard what it is that the Eskom spokesperson in Gauteng has to say, at least, that one, they're burdened with the fact that we spoke to her yesterday, that there's also a situation where you find people are building within their properties and they're renting rooms, but they're also not paying for the electricity. They're bridging for the electricity. I wonder what you made when you heard of that.
Well, what we made of that is that there's clearly a need for more electricity, and that's something that Eskom is not being able to keep up with. We've also found that there's a real weaponization of language against the poor. If you know, this term is in Yorker, where there's this imagery of a criminal running around the neighborhood connecting electricity illegally. That again is for us evidence of some kind of racism, given that, you know, this is often thought of as black working class people who are doing these community connections. So rather than Eskom keeping up with the need of the people, it rather would privatize its services, privilege big business, and then blame the poor when they are unable to pay. We also found that in some areas, even when people are paying, when people are buying electricity, they're still being cut off from the grid through programs like load reduction and also because of faulty infrastructure. So when people get their money at the end of the month, they buy prepaid electricity, but there's no guarantee that they will be able to use that electricity, not by any fault of their own, but because of faulty infrastructure, load shedding and load reduction.
You also take a look at the various 9 provinces experiencing load reduction in different ways. Why was this so important? We see the Free State and the number of load reduction occasions over 30 days rather, being at 46.
We're not sure. We're actually doing a bit of follow-up research about how the provinces experience this differently, because this phase of the research focused mostly on Gauteng. But we found in a place like the Western Cape, there's not a lot of load reduction, and it's unclear to us why there are these differences. It might be because of the population, but it's unclear as to how they arrive at these choices.